Hi, welcome back to Loving the Guitar, where I like to talk about guitars and how they move me. Today, on the topic of being moved so well, I should say. This morning, I should say, I evacuated quite a huge lump, or a pile, I should say. It in for all intents and purposes, it was going to eventually rear its ugly head, evacuate from my body. That is that turd, that inkling, that thing that needs to get out of you. Like you know what? I got this idea. What can I do with the idea? Well, I thought, well, maybe if I squeeze it enough and compress it, maybe if I just, like mold it and shape it into something, and eventually somebody's gonna say, hey, what are you doing over there with that pound of clay? Well, I was just pounding a piece of clay until you came over here and interrupted my stream of consciousness. And so here's the thing. Some people don't like the way things are done. In fact, there's a group of people that only even like it when there's the background music in the background. So you know what? I think I have a knob I can do this with. Hold on. Does that do it? Oh my God! This could be a new thing I've just discovered. Is it possible that I can control the volume of my own show? Yes. With just this little volume knob? Oh my God, it's amazing what a volume knob can do nowadays. And just when you thought you knew it all, that you figured out so many things. Yeah, even HDMI. I still don't understand the USB-C, speeds. I don't know, fire connections. Well, that's the, you know what? And back in my day, there was such an easy thing. I think life was so easy. They just had volume knobs, tone knobs. Okay, let's take the music away. Look at it, it's just fading away. How about that, folks? That is so annoying. Yes, I know. So today's lament is the annoyance of what you perceive other people are experiencing because of, just the way you do things. You know what? You're going to have to let it breathe. And what I mean by that, not just you breathing, but like them breathing too. They may take up a lot of space, not just physically, but head space, I could say. And some of these spaces include like an emotional space. If that person who doesn't like you or your music tells you, or not so much you, but they say they don't like your music. You're like, you're a nice guy, but that music, or you're a really pretty girl, but that music is really ugly, And so everybody's entitled to their opinion, see? It's like an asshole. Everybody has one. All right, so actually, there are some people, but let's leave those special people out. People who are not, don't have an asshole. Okay. You probably don't know the value of having your own asshole until you don't have one. And this is definitely not where this episode is going to go. All right, so what are we talking about today? Like the importance of what other people think about your music. Or your playing. Or the speed at which you're advancing through life, page by page, one day at a time. How is it that you're able to do these feats of wonder? Well, it is by incremental days of chipping away at some sort of block you're trying to get through, and then shape it into something. And if that something is, well, the desire to pick up a guitar and do something with it. I think you'd be cheating yourself if you didn't go with that, that initiative. and see it through and see what happens. You may suck, and that's okay. And you got to be okay with sucking. What I mean by that is that there's going to be days where it just nothing seems to work. You know, even your best guitar makes you sound lousy, or you sound lousy. And that's a good thing. You know why? Because that means you're real. Because you're so affected by something that you suck now at even the good things you do. Now, some may say, you kind of lose control when that affects you. You know, you know. But maybe there's another way to look at that. Some of these great songs that have endured for decades are songs that came because of something deep, something maybe emotional, something spiritual, something maybe that made them angry or something, or made them want to change something for themselves, or it was a revelation of some sort, or a story of a reflection of some sort. It's a means of an escape of either time or outside of time, so that if it's recorded, then it could be replayed over and over again, as many times as you like, for the person who wants to hear it over and over again. It's kind of like a Beatles record, for people who actually realized that there was a time when music gone went from like a store to a household via a piece of vinyl pressed with grooves in it, and you had to be really careful. You get it home, and then you play with your needle on the turntable, knowing that each time you put the needle on the turntable on the record, you're actually etching away at the surface of that item that it cost you money to get at the record store, and you brought it home, and if you drop it, it could break. And every time you put the needle on it, the needle wears the grooves just a little bit more, and you put more cracks and pops and scratches into the record. So there was a lot of it, not just money invested, but your time and your awareness that it's a special time. And what makes a special time special, even if you've done the same thing over and over again? Well, here's something that you can think about. And this might only be understood by those in my generation. But let's just say you get your favorite record, or nowadays your favorite tape, or CD or something, or MP3, whatever, download, whatever. And it cost you, back then everything cost us, It could be like a half a week, or a quarter, or a half a day's pay for a record, But here's the thing. So you get your record, and it's cost you what it did, and you get home, and it quickly starts to depreciate from the very first listen. So you got to get all your licks in there. And if you take care of your records, of course, you can play them for like 500 times, But by that time, you're not really getting really high fidelity of anything. But still, you may get the spirit of it, truly, still. But that was the power of that first listen. How valuable was that? Imagine, you get your Pink Floyd album, and a lot of those cool Pink Floyd albums, what was really cool about them is that there's a lot of dynamics in there. So if they're not loud, then they're like quiet, or not quiet, but then it brings the listener in. It's like, what is that? But on a record that can scratch and pop, all those silences were filled eventually with scratches and pops, and the needle. You can hear the scratchy needle going across the the record, but still the song's coming through. But you had to include all that scratchy noise, and it was just inherent, and you accepted it, and we worked past the noise in order to hear the music. And it's profound how we see noise now and hear noise and feel noise and what does noise represent to us. There was a time when there was a tolerance to noise in order to hear what we needed to hear. So we had to, filter out in our minds what the noise in order to hear the music. I mean, this is even pre-Dolby, okay? Old Dolby even. Yeah. Well, let's not get into noise reduction because I don't think any sort of noise reduction was ever any good. So yeah, because there was no noise reduction in any of the early amps and stuff modeling. Early racks and stuff. There was none of that. I mean, sure, yeah, we did. There was some noise gates. Actually I had a noise gate in my rack. And I went through a period in my life where I was traveling with racks, and I did develop a system. It was my rack that would eventually tie into my Marshall and my Showman, my Fender Showman. But things have changed now. So and now everything's gated, and because we saturate our sounds so much that when we're trying to shut it off, you could still hear that a lot of the noisy stuff that's inherent in chain of effects. So now, we include the noise gate as part of like a note that we hit on our on our guitars or saxophones. Now it's like a mute note. We have to, because it's now embedded into us. To include the gate sound. I mean, I think one of the things about the '80s which kind of disturbed me was the gated drums. That we were hearing being recorded. That's very '80s music. That kind of stuff. That kind of that that whole time during it while it was happening, it irked me the whole time. I hated it. I didn't like the overly processed reverbs that were coming out. I mean, you know. Yeah, okay. I mean, I could just name some groups that kind of pissed me off, but not because of musicianship or even their choice of music, or their genre, or how they play it or sing it. But it's just the over excessiveness of too much atmospheric stuff. Like I was gonna say, like even Duran Duran, too much. I mean, well, beautiful stuff, but here, no, no, Simple Mind. Just there we go. More layer, more like thick, just a wash. It's like, oh God. It's like I like hearing clarity, and I think you guys probably understand that through my channel. Sometimes I like also using a lot of distortion. Um, you know what I find very helpful to understand is that if there's a clean background, then actually having a distorted lead instrument is really cool. But if the opposite is true, for if there's a very heavily saturated rhythm section going on, rhythm guitar going on, you may want to consider doing not joining in with more distortion louder to fight with that, compete with that, but rather, you know, turn down the gain so that your sound of those notes are different from the background, which is distorted. So there's a differentiator then.